Today we're exploring the chilling world of urban legends that turned out to be true, in the form of an iceberg. These are stories that sound unbelievable, but beneath the surface lie real events, strange mysteries, and terrifying truths. The Killer in the Backseat. The story of the killer in the backseat is one of the most famous urban legends in American culture, but unlike many others, this one is rooted in a chilling real-life event. The legend goes like this. A woman is driving alone at night when she notices another car behind her. The driver keeps flashing their high beams, tailgating her, or acting erratically. She thinks she's being followed by a maniac, but when she finally stops, either at home or a gas station, the truth is revealed. The driver wasn't trying to hurt her, they were trying to warn her, because hidden in the backseat of her own car was a killer waiting to attack. It's a story meant to tap into primal fears, isolation, being watched, and danger lurking just out of sight. While it sounds like something straight out of a horror movie, this legend is believed to have been inspired by a real case from the 1960s. In one of the most often cited versions, a woman was driving late at night in California when a truck driver began flashing his lights behind her. Alarmed, she pulled into a gas station, and the truck driver told her that he had seen a man pop up from her back seat with a knife. Police were called, and sure enough, a would-be attacker was found hiding in her car. Over time, the details of the story have been altered, exaggerated, or dramatized, but the core truth remains. There have been multiple documented cases of attackers hiding in backseats to ambush drivers, and that real threat gave this urban legend the credibility it needed to spread. Poisoned Halloween candy. The idea that strangers are slipping poison or razor blades into Halloween candy is one of the most widespread urban legends in America. Every year, parents check their kids' candy for tampering, news outlets run stories warning families to be careful, and schools send home reminders not to accept anything unwrapped. But what many people don't realize is that this urban legend didn't come out of nowhere. It was fueled by a handful of real, horrifying cases. Perhaps the most infamous of these is the case of Timothy O'Brien, an 8-year-old boy from Texas who died on Halloween night in 1974 after eating a pixie sticks laced with cyanide. At first, people feared that a stranger had poisoned the candy, but the truth was even worse. It was his own father, Ronald O'Brien, who had poisoned the candy to collect life insurance money. He had actually given out other tainted candies in an attempt to make the crime look random. Thankfully, no other children ate them. O'Brien was later convicted and executed, and the case earned him the nickname, the Candyman. While this case was the most extreme, it wasn't the only one. In 1970, a 5-year-old boy named Kevin Toston died after eating a heroin-laced Halloween candy. But investigators later discovered that he had found the drug in his uncle's home, and the family tried to cover it up by blaming trick-or-treating. Over the decades, there have been scattered reports of sharp objects or needles in the candy, but nearly all of them turn out to be hoaxes, pranks, or cases where the object was inserted after the fact. Despite this, the legend persists, fueled by media hype, parental fear, and the uniquely vulnerable nature of Halloween itself, where strangers give out food to children in the dark. The body under the bed. The urban legend of the body under the bed is one of those stories that sounds too outrageous to be true. A couple checks into a hotel room, only to be overwhelmed by a strange smell. After complaining to the front desk, hotel staff investigates and eventually discovers a corpse hidden inside the box spring or beneath the mattress. It's become a common horror story told to travelers, often dismissed as fiction. But disturbingly, this one has happened multiple times, not just once, but in hotels across the United States. One of the earliest documented cases occurred at a hotel in Atlantic City, New Jersey. A man and a woman noticed a foul odor in their room, but still decided to stay the night. When housekeeping later came to clean, they lifted the mattress and found a decomposing body stuffed in the box spring. Since then, similar cases have been reported in Florida, Las Vegas, Memphis, and even Kansas City. Sometimes the body had been there for days, sometimes weeks, and in many cases, other guests had already stayed in the room without realizing what was beneath them. The real horror of this story isn't just that it happened, but how many times it's happened. In most cases, the victims were murder victims whose bodies were hidden in haste by killers who assumed no one would look under the bed frame. And they were right. Because the smell of decomposition can be mistaken for mold, old carpet, or poor ventilation, most hotel staff don't investigate until someone complains. The Hookman. The Hookman legend is one of the most iconic American urban myths. The story typically involves a young couple parked at a secluded lover's lane late at night when they hear a warning on the radio. A man with a hook for a hand has escaped from a nearby institution. They hear scratching sounds, get spooked, and drive away, only to later find a bloody hook hanging from the car door handle. It's a cautionary tale about teenage recklessness, often told to scare people into staying safe. But while the hook itself may be symbolic, the core idea of couples being attacked in isolated spots is tragically real. In fact, one of the earliest cases that may have inspired this legend occurred in 1946 during the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. Over a 10-week period, a masked man attacked several young couples who were parked in their cars at night. He killed 5 people and seriously injured others, often using a gun or a blunt object. The attacker was never caught, and the case became known as the work of the Phantom Killer. Though he didn't use a hook, the Phantom operated in the exact kind of setting the Hookman legend describes: remote lovers' lanes, nighttime ambushes, and sudden violence targeting teens. The case caused widespread panic across Arkansas and Texas, and residents were warned not to go out at night. Within a few years, the Hookman narrative started spreading across the country. The imagery of the hook may have been added later as a visual symbol, something easily remembered, creepy, and open to endless retellings. But the core of the story, an anonymous attacker targeting parked cars, was already burned into public memory. Over the decades, similar crimes have continued to occur, reinforcing the myth. In some cases, survivors reported hearing strange noises, seeing figures in the woods, or finding damage to their car, just enough detail to keep the legend alive. Police and psychologists have long suggested that the Hookman story is a cultural response to real events, combining fear, morality, and memory into one unforgettable narrative. Humans can lick too. The legend goes like this. A young girl is home alone for the night. Her parents are out, and her loyal dog sleeps beside her bed. In the dark, she hears strange noises, creaks, movement, but every time she reaches down from her bed, she feels her dog lick her hand. Comforted, she eventually falls asleep. In the morning, she wakes up and finds the dog dead, slaughtered. And scrawled on the wall in blood are the words, "Humans can lick too." It's one of the most iconic urban legends ever told. But what most people don't realize is that this one has real roots. The exact phrase, "humans can lick too," seems to have first appeared in print in the 1980s. But the core idea, someone hiding in a house while the occupant believes they're safe, has been around for much longer. There have been numerous real documented cases of intruders secretly living in people's homes, sometimes for days or weeks at a time, often in attics, crawl spaces, or closets. In 2008, a man in Japan discovered a woman had been living in the top shelf of his kitchen cupboard, stealing food and showering while he was away. In the US, there have been chilling 911 calls where homeowners discovered strangers in their walls or under their beds. And in rare cases, killers have entered the homes without a trace, sometimes even hiding while the victim was inside. While the specifics of the licked hand story are exaggerated, the fear it taps into, being watched, being close to danger without realizing it, is grounded in reality. Slender Man. The Slender Man is often thought as an internet-born boogeyman. A tall, faceless humanoid in a black suit with impossibly long limbs, who stalks children and causes them to vanish. He originated from a 2009 Photoshop contest on the Something Awful forums, where users were challenged to create eerie paranormal images. But despite his fictional origin, Slender Man quickly evolved into a full-blown myth, complete with elaborate lore, online stories, and even video series portraying him as a malevolent, supernatural entity. And terrifyingly, this modern myth inspired real-world violence. In 2014, two 12-year-old girls in Waukesha, Wisconsin, lured their friend into the woods and stabbed her 19 times. They later told the police that they did it to appease Slenderman, believing that if they didn't, he would hurt their families. The victim miraculously survived, crawling to a nearby road where she was found by a cyclist. The case shocked the world. It raised serious questions about the influence of internet folklore, the mental state of the attackers, and how digital myths can blur the line between fiction and reality, especially for young, impressionable minds. Both girls were later diagnosed with mental health conditions, and one was committed to a mental institution. The court documents revealed that they truly believed Slenderman lived in a mansion in the woods, and that by killing for him, they would be allowed to live with him as his proxies. The event became the subject of documentaries and books, and was widely cited in debates over internet safety and the psychological effects of horror media. But even before the stabbing, stories of tall, shadowy figures appearing in forests, bedrooms, or dreams had existed in folklore from around the world. From Germany's Der Grossmann to the shadow people of American paranormal lore, Slenderman wasn't entirely original. He was a digital evolution of ancient archetypes. That connection between real-world legends and online horror gave the myth staying power, and tragically, enough influence to drive someone to violence. Real haunted houses. Some of the most terrifying horror stories and movies ever made were inspired by real-life houses where something truly disturbing was said to have happened. These aren't just urban legends made up for shock value. They're based on actual locations with long histories of alleged paranormal activity, criminal events, or psychological horror. One of the most infamous examples is the Amityville house in New York. In 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered his entire family while they slept, claiming later that voices in the house told him to do it. A year later, the Lutz family moved in and only lasted 28 days before fleeing, claiming they were being tormented by supernatural forces. Their experiences, including cold spots, levitating beds, green slime oozing from walls, and demonic voices, became the foundation for the Amityville horror book and film franchise. While skeptics have questioned the truth of the Lutz family claims, the murders were undeniably real, and even investigators reported strange feelings and odd readings inside the house. Another example is the house that inspired the Conjuring franchise, the Perron family farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island. In the 1970s, the Perrons reported violent hauntings, including possessions, strange smells, disembodied voices, and terrifying encounters with a spirit they called Bathsheba, believed to have been a witch who once lived on the property. Paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, who also investigated Amityville, were involved in the case, and the reports formed the basis for the film. The house still stands today and continues to attract attention from paranormal investigators and curious visitors. Even the story behind the movie The Exorcist had real roots. The case that inspired it involved a 14-year-old boy in Maryland in 1949, who reportedly underwent months of exorcisms after strange behavior, objects flying across rooms, and unexplainable scratches appeared on his body. While details were kept quiet by the church, records confirm that several priests believed the case involved demonic possession, and the boy eventually recovered after a final exorcism was performed. These stories, whether exaggerated or not, were all built around real people, real homes, and events that left psychological scars behind, which is why they continue to haunt the public imagination. Buried alive. The idea of someone being buried alive sounds like the stuff of nightmares, and for most people, it's a fear rooted in old horror films or gothic fiction. But history has shown that this terrifying scenario has happened in real life more than once. One of the most chilling and well-documented cases comes from 1915, involving a man named Angelo Hayes in France. At just 19 years old, Hayes suffered a severe motorcycle accident that left him unconscious and disfigured. When doctors couldn't find a pulse, they declared him dead. He was buried shortly after. But 2 days later, his grave was exhumed due to an insurance investigation, and to everyone's shock, they found his body still warm. Angelo Hayes had been buried alive, but had survived, unconscious, but breathing, in a shallow coma. Doctors said the head trauma had slowed his metabolism to the point that it mimicked death. He eventually made a full recovery, and later went on to invent a custom-built, life-supporting coffin designed to prevent such mistakes. This wasn't an isolated case. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the fear of premature burial was so common that people installed safety coffins, devices with flags, bells, or breathing tubes, in case someone woke up underground. These weren't just gimmicks. They were responses to very real cases of exhumed coffins found with scratch marks on the inside, or corpses in positions suggesting that they had tried to escape. Medical science at the time had no reliable way to confirm death, and cataleptic states or comas could easily be misread. Even as late as the 21st century, occasional cases have emerged, where mourners reported hearing screams from inside a freshly buried coffin just hours after the funeral. The Phantom Hitchhiker. The legend of the Phantom Hitchhiker is one of the oldest and most widespread ghost stories in the world. A mysterious figure seen on the side of the road, usually late at night, who vanishes without a trace. Drivers report picking up a quiet hitchhiker, often a young woman dressed in white, only for her to disappear from the back seat mid-ride or shortly after being dropped off. Sometimes she gives an address, and when the driver follows up, they're told the person has been dead for years. It sounds like pure folklore, but surprisingly, there are numerous real-life cases, documented by police and local media, where these types of encounters have occurred, often followed by tragic or unexplained consequences. One of the most famous cases comes from the Chicago area, involving a figure known as Resurrection Mary. Since the 1930s, dozens of drivers have claimed to see a young woman hitchhiking along Archer Avenue near Resurrection Cemetery. She's described as blonde, wearing a white party dress, and usually asking to be taken home. But when the driver approaches the cemetery gates, she vanishes. Over the decades, police have received enough reports to take some of the sightings seriously, though no definitive explanation has ever been found. What adds to the mystery is that several reports match in precise detail: the same appearance, the same stretch of road, and the same outcome. Another chilling case occurred in the Philippines in the 1990s, where multiple taxi drivers claimed they had picked up a woman late at night who would remain silent during the ride, then vanish upon arrival. One driver even filed a police report after driving a passenger to a house, only for the family to tell him their daughter had died years earlier. These kinds of stories have emerged all over the world: Japan, Brazil, South Africa, often near accident sites or areas with a dark history. While skeptics argue that they're just ghost stories passed down over time, some of the most compelling cases come from professional drivers and police officers with no reason to lie. Charlie No Face, the Green Man. In western Pennsylvania, there's a long-standing urban legend about a glowing green figure who walks the roads at night. Kids call him the Green Man. According to the stories, he was some kind of mutant, maybe the victim of a chemical spill, or a ghostly presence that haunted rural highways. They said his skin was melted, his face was deformed, and if you saw him, you'd either die or go insane. For decades, this was just another local legend whispered among teens. But what most people didn't realize was that the Green Man was real. His name was Raymond Robinson, and he wasn't a monster. He was just a man. When Raymond was just a child in the 1910s, he accidentally touched a power line and was horribly electrocuted. He survived, but with massive injuries that left his face disfigured. His eyes and nose were gone, and his skin was deeply scarred. Because of the way people reacted to him in public, Raymond lived a quiet, reclusive life. But at night, when fewer people were around, he would go out for walks along the highway near his home in Beaver County. He wasn't trying to scare anyone, he just liked to walk. Still, rumors spread. Drivers would catch a glimpse of him in the dark and panic. Stories twisted the truth, and over time, Raymond became the Green Man, a ghost story, a cautionary tale, and a monster. In reality, he was harmless. He even spoke to people who stopped to talk with him, sometimes posing for photos or sharing a cigarette. He passed away in 1985, but the legend lives on. The Silent Twins. The story of the Silent Twins, June and Jennifer Gibbons, is one of the most unsettling and mysterious true cases of psychological isolation ever recorded. Born in 1963 in Wales to Caribbean immigrant parents, June and Jennifer were inseparable from a young age. But what made them truly unique was their intense refusal to communicate with anyone else. They spoke only to each other in a private, sped-up version of English that no one else could understand. Teachers, doctors, and even family members couldn't reach them. Though they weren't deaf or mute, they remained completely silent in public, often mirroring each other's movements and thoughts in eerie synchronization. Their bond was so intense that many believed they shared a kind of psychic connection. Over time, their behavior became more erratic. As teenagers, they isolated themselves in their bedroom, writing dark fiction and diaries filled with disturbing fantasies. Eventually, they began committing petty crimes, including arson, which led to their sentencing at Broadmoor Hospital, a high-security psychiatric facility known for housing violent criminals. While institutionalized, their strange behavior only deepened. They continued refusing to speak to anyone but each other, yet they began to express growing resentment and fear towards one another. Jennifer allegedly wrote in her diary that one of them would have to die for the other to truly live. Doctors and journalists who studied the twins described their presence as unnerving, almost otherworldly. In 1993, after nearly 11 years in Broadmoor, the twins were approved for a transfer to a lower security facility. But just hours after their release, Jennifer suddenly collapsed and died of acute myocarditis, an inflammation of the heart. She had shown no signs of illness beforehand, and no drugs or toxins were found in her system. Her death remains unexplained. After Jennifer died, June began speaking to others, reintegrated into society, and now lives a relatively quiet life. The twins had always claimed they were trapped in a silent prison of their own making, unable to escape each other's influence. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. The Dyatlov Pass Incident is one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries of the 20th century, and it's also the source of countless urban legends and bizarre theories. In 1959, 9 experienced Soviet hikers led by Igor Dyatlov set out on a skiing expedition in the Ural Mountains. They never returned. Weeks later, a search party found their campsite in a disturbing state. The hikers had cut their way out of their tent from the inside, despite temperatures dropping below -30 degrees Celsius. Their bodies were discovered scattered across the mountainside, some with traumatic injuries. One had a fractured skull, 2 had crushed ribs, and 1 was missing her tongue and eyes. No signs of a struggle or external injuries consistent with those traumas were ever found, and radiation was detected on some of their clothing. Soviet authorities quickly closed the investigation and declared the cause of death as a compelling natural force. The strange details fueled a wave of urban myths and conspiracy theories that have only grown stronger with time. Some claimed the group was attacked by a Yeti or some undiscovered creature. Others believed that they had stumbled upon a secret military experiment, possibly involving weapons testing or radiation. UFO theories also emerged, especially after reports of glowing lights seen in the sky near the campsite on the night they died. Even the idea of infrasound, low-frequency wind-induced vibrations that can cause panic and confusion, has been floated as a possible explanation. The lack of transparency from Soviet officials at the time only deepened the mystery, and for decades, the incident remained classified and heavily censored. In recent years, Russian authorities reopened the case and concluded that an avalanche was the likely cause, citing new modeling that suggested a slab of snow could have struck the tent. but many experts and members of the public remain unconvinced. The injuries, strange behavior, and the group's apparent panic don't all fit neatly into that explanation. The Vanishing Hotel Room. The Vanishing Hotel Room is one of the strangest urban legends. A story that's circulated in different countries and eras, always with the same eerie twist. A traveler, usually a woman, checks into a hotel in a foreign country with a friend or a relative. The companion falls ill and is left behind while the traveler goes out for help. But when they return, the hotel staff denies ever seeing them, says the room never existed, and all records of the companion have vanished. The guest is left alone, confused, and gaslighted by everyone around them. Most people assume the story is pure fiction, but its roots trace back to a real disappearance that occurred in the early 1900s and has never been fully explained. The most commonly cited version involves a mother and a daughter visiting Paris for the 1889 Exposition Universelle. The mother falls ill at their hotel, and the daughter is sent out to retrieve medicine. After hours of searching, she returns, only to be told there is no record of their stay. The room is occupied by someone else, and no one knows who she is. The story was later popularized in a 1913 short story called The Lost Room, and again in a 1950 film titled So Long at the Fair. But some researchers believe it was loosely inspired by a real case involving a British woman named Violet Charlesworth, who vanished in Paris under mysterious circumstances around the same time. The details were murky, but newspaper reports and diplomatic correspondence from the era suggest that confusion, missing persons, and possible government cover-ups did happen in hotels during the chaotic time of the Exposition, especially with disease outbreaks like the plague causing panic and secret quarantines. Whether or not the original version happened exactly as told, similar cases have been documented throughout the 20th century. Tourists going missing abroad, records being lost, and families never receiving answers. In a time before digital check-ins and surveillance, it was surprisingly easy for someone to vanish without a trace, and for authorities to deny involvement. So what do you think? Are these legends warnings we should listen to, or just stories that grew too wild over time? Drop your thoughts and any legends you've heard in the comments below. And if you want to explore more mysteries, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Thanks for watching.